Can we just stick to the Constitution? I'm Brian Lilley with TheRebel.Media. I want to talk to you about a very important issue that's not going to be discussed by most of the players in the federal election. It's not going to be discussed by the parties. It's not going to be discussed by most in the media. And that's getting our federal leaders and our provincial leaders eventually to stick to the Constitution. See, the British North America Act of 1867, the Constitution Act of 1982, they lay out very specific duties for the federal government and very specific duties for the provincial government. These are lines of communication. These are lines of responsibility that say, you do this, we'll do that. Everyone looks after their own business, but that's been muddied over the years. And so now you've got politicians all trying to one-up each other. And we saw this in the federal debate with Tom Mulcair and Elizabeth May constantly calling out for money to be spent on local municipal infrastructure.
And we also need to invest in municipal infrastructure. That infrastructure deficit is $123 billion. We need to get at it as our bridges and roads are crumbling.
Well, Paul, I have a concrete plan to kickstart the economy and help the middle class. We're going to invest in infrastructure. We ask our municipalities and local governments to assume 60% of the cost for infrastructure with only 8% of the tax base. That's not going to work. We will invest in local infrastructure and help small businesses to create jobs.
You know what? I don't want the federal government paving city roads. Why? Because then it muddies responsibility. Who's in charge of paving municipal roads? That should be the municipalities. Who's in charge of the municipalities? The province. They have constitutional responsibility for the provinces, so leave it to them. They have the ability to raise taxes either at the municipal level or the provincial level if they need it. But we don't need taxpayers in St. John's, Newfoundland paying for a local road in Vancouver, British Columbia, or vice versa. It doesn't make sense. Let's simplify things. Then you've got the constant push to bring about a national daycare program like Tom Mulcair wants.
We sincerely disagree, and we want to create 1 million $15 a day quality childcare spaces. That's not just good for families, that's good for the economy as well.
You know what? A national daycare program is a social program, which means it's the responsibility of the provincial governments. We don't need the feds meddling in provincial affairs. Again, it muddies the water. When something gets messed up, and you've got all this shared jurisdictional funding, when something gets messed up, who's going to get the blame? Who's responsible for it not going right? Well, the province will say the feds didn't give us enough money. The feds will say, well, we just gave the money. It's up to them to run it. This muddies the water. I want to read to you from the Canadian Medical Association. They put out a statement just after the debate was over, decrying the fact that healthcare wasn't talked about at all. It is truly unfortunate that the first TV debate in Canada's election campaign did not include thorough discussion of healthcare. Recently, the Parliamentary Budget Officer warned limits imposed by the federal government on health transfer payments will eventually make it impossible for provinces and territories to handle the cost of an aging population. That should be a wake-up call to all of us. That from the head of the Canadian Medical Association, whose name is Dr. Chris Simpson. You know what? I call BS. The provincial governments have the ability to raise taxes if they want. They have almost the same taxing powers as the federal government. Why does the federal government need to collect the money in Ottawa, pay their bureaucrats to send it off to the provinces? No. Again, it muddies responsibility. We need to get back to the Constitution, whether we're talking about Stephen Harper and his calls for infrastructure spending, his bragging about improving healthcare, whether we're talking about Mulcair, Trudeau, May, calling for more money to be spent on that, or for pharmacare programs and daycare programs. No, we need to stick to the Constitution, simplify the lines of responsibility, and then we will know who to hold to account when things go well or when things go bad.